of my life that lives through me, and the dark reflections from society. Now she comes forth, Persephone resurrected, I rise again.
Hi, Colin Davis. This is the Solutio podcast, and it is Tuesday, April 28th, 2026. And today, I'm going to really jump right into it. Well, let me give you the links like I always do. shadowtechalchemy.com, soluciopodcast.com, melissamarimovie.com. What you just saw, you can find at o1experience.com or at melissamarimusic.com. And so today, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to actually go through a workshop that I'm preparing, and I'm going to use this opportunity to do it live. And it's not going to be exactly like the full workshop, which I'm still working through, but this is a way for me to work it through, and it's a way for me to generate some good content. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, this workshop could be done in, I'd say a minimum of 2 hours at the least. Maybe 3 hours is better, but I've got 2 hours in this show. And I like to take your calls and talk to you guys. So I'm not actually sure how far I'll be able to go in detail. I think I'll probably get to the shadow work practices and then we'll kind of run through them, because it really does take a whole other hour or more to really, talk about each one of them in detail. So this will be kind of a rough, a sketch of the whole thing. But I better get started so people can rewind this and watch this in the after the fact if they come in late. So anyway, let's see how we're going to do this here. All right, so what we're talking about today is we're talking about the subject of the shadow. We're talking about the subject of the shadow. We're talking about the subject of Jungian individuation and inner alchemy. We're talking about working on ourselves. We're talking about healing ourselves. We're talking about digging up our wounds. We're talking about working through our complexes, our dysregulated complexes, our exiled parts, you could call it. We're talking about working through our personas, our social identities, and figuring out what's in our identity, what's in our persona that's ours, and what is collective that we need to shed, that just doesn't go along with who we are and what we're really all about. Because we all come into this world with, we're socialized, and then we're taught what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. And what is not acceptable is shoved down into the unconscious, and that is actually the original source of the shadow. The shadow starts with what we might call the structural shadow. It's the shadow that forms as we figure out through our relationships with our parents and through socialization what we can put into the world and what we can't put into the world. So some of what we can't put into the world is due to familial or cultural preference. But a lot of what we can't put into the world is just our primal nature, our animal nature, that if we were to put that in the world, we'd wreck society. In order to have organized societies, we have to be able to do something with our primal side, our animalistic side, our reptilian and mammalian side. What are we going to do with all of that? What are we going to do with the raw sexuality and aggression and power drives and all of that? What are we going to do with that? That just wrecks society. So it's got to go somewhere. And so what we've been doing it for all of time is that we've been repressing it into the unconscious. And then what we also repress into the unconscious is we repress our primal side that would destroy society if we were to let it loose. We repress the familial and cultural material that isn't acceptable to our family and community. And then we repress all the leftover feelings and memories from personal and intergenerational trauma, right? And all of the dysregulated energy that comes from our split up complexes that were created through childhood trauma. So this is all the stuff of the shadow. And something has to be done with that. That has to go somewhere. And so that's what we're working with here. That's what we're talking about. What do we do with that material? What do we do with it? So I'm going to talk in a little bit about all the ways that we project it and displace it and what it does to us when we don't work with it. But that's what we're talking about today, is how do we become conscious of this material, and how do we step to another level of maturity, of evolution, of human evolution, and actually consciously work with this material so that it doesn't wreck us, our lives, our families, our communities, and the whole world any more than it already has. Because we are a world in denial of the shadow. And so we are a world where we have an understanding, there is an understanding, thanks to Carl Jung and the Jungians, we have an understanding of how this works, but we have denied it. We have not paid attention because most people feel it's too difficult. And so it's easier to just live in this good versus evil game than it is to actually work on your shadow material and become a cutting edge evolutionary human being. But that's not what we're doing. We're becoming cutting edge evolutionary human beings. So that's what we're talking about. And we're talking about, just in general, a lifestyle of alchemy, of a lifestyle of shadow awareness, a lifestyle and an ethic of working on yourself for your own healing, so that you can access your own gold, so you can get in touch with your own highest purpose, because that inner gold is locked up with shame and fear and guilt and all of that other shadow material. And so that's part of the reason why we're doing this. That's kind of the main reason, is so that we can access our inner gold, and so that we can heal ourselves in whatever kinds of neurotic and compulsive or addictive behaviors we have, and mood swings and all of that, right? All of the instability of our inner state that we may have. So that's a big reason, personal healing, self-healing is the primary reason why we're doing this. But then we're doing it for everybody else. We're doing it for humanity. Once you get to a certain point, you realize this is for everyone. And so, because we don't want to just, like Michael Meade has this term, he says, become an elder, not an older, right? An older is just a human who just grows old, but they don't become an elder. An elder is somebody who develops wisdom through introspection, through working on themselves, through crashing and pulling themselves up, and then crashing and pulling themselves up, and analyzing themselves and analyzing the crash and figuring out what is going on, and studying reality and studying nature and studying relationships and paying attention to reality and the construction of reality. Those people develop wisdom, and then they can be true elders, and then they can nurture and mirror younger people. And we have a whole society of children in adult bodies, and people who grow into being olders rather than elders. And we don't want to do that here. That's not what we're doing here. So we have to work on ourselves. We have to heal ourselves. We have to evolve ourselves. So this is a mandate of inner evolution. And that's what this is. This is a new ethic, as Eric Neumann called it, a new ethic of shadow-aware life, and a new ethic of individuating, Jung's term for evolving, individuating for healing yourself and the world. That's what we're all about. And we live in an infantilized, regressed, dumbed down, postmodern civilization now, where people don't even take things like that seriously. They're just in their little cribs, their little social media cribs. And so we're doing something. Melissa Mari had a term, homobilancia, balanced mankind. That's our goal. That's what we're doing. We're balancing ourselves, and then when we get to the point to where we have some level of competence and some kind of level of history with this, then we can start teaching it to other people. This is not about your little cult of your little thing. This is about creating and joining the movement of shadow-aware individuators, alchemists, psycho-spiritual alchemists who are taking this incredibly seriously. So that's what we're doing, and that's what this is all about. Now, because this is like I said before, this is a practice. This is an online kind of version of a workshop that I'm working out. I'll give you a little bit of my background, talk a little bit about Melissa, even though a lot of people who have been on here know about my background and know about Melissa. You saw Melissa in those videos in the beginning of this broadcast. But very quickly, I mean, I was a self-aware person, all my whole life, really. I went back and found some of my diaries and stuff from like age 15, 16, and I was like noticing things about myself that I needed to work on. So, but I didn't really focus on that very heavily until I got to age 35, which was about 21 years ago. And because I was a musician, and my whole life was about touring and recording and managing bands and all of that stuff, building studios and all of that. That was my whole 20s and 30s. And but I had a huge crash when I was 35, and everything crashed from every direction, a typical dark night of the soul. And I noticed at that period that I had just turned another cycle. That what had really happened is that this was just a repeat of what had happened at a smaller scale in the past multiple times before. And I finally got it, and I finally saw it. And synchronistically, a friend of mine who had known a famous Jungian named Robert Johnson, one of the most well-known Jungians there is, and he knew about Johnson's books, and he had left at my studio, he had left a copy of Owning Your Own Shadow. So I pulled that book off the shelf, and I read that book, and I realized, wow, this is it. This is it. This is where I have to go. This is what I have to do. This is what it's all about. So that started me on the inner work path seriously. And then at the same time, I was red-pilled. I found out about the September 11th thing and all the other conspiracies and conspiracy theories, so to speak. And I went down the rabbit hole and looked at all that dark cultural and institutional shadow material. And I got sucked down into all that for several years, really trying to figure out what is this whole world about, and trying to discern fact from fiction and all of that. And that was very good training. And it took me years to actually be able to kind of frame it all and to understand it and what was going on here. But I finally got that what was happening was that what I was looking at with Red Pill World was just the outer correlate to what I was working with in myself, in the shadow, the personal shadow. Deep state in here, deep state out there, right? So that took a while to figure that out, because at first I was wanting to know for years, what is the nature of evil? What is behind all of this? Is it psychopaths? Is it this? Is it some certain secret ideology, some new world order? What is it? Eventually I figured out, well, it's the shadow of mankind. It's the shadow of the human psyche that we're all in denial of. And so then it manifests itself in the external world through all of that institutional or integrated evil that we discover when we take the red pill, when we put on the glasses. So, but anyway, so I worked on myself and studied Jungian psychology and did other things and pursued my music career and all that stuff for about 8 years. And then I met Melissa. And Melissa was another musician, and as you see when I play her material, just an incredible songwriter, singer, performer, just an amazing, deep, incredible artist. And Melissa was on the same path as me. She was working on her shadow. She was working on herself. She was trying to unwind her complexes. She was trying to heal herself. She was trying to access her gold that had not been accessed yet. She was trying to work out her neuroses and her self-esteem issues and all of that, like I was. So we psychoanalyzed each other, and we formed what we later recognized as an alchemical relationship. where you use the relationship as an alchemical vessel. And conflict, when conflict shows up, that's the fire, that's what you use for getting access to your shadow material and to your complexes that you start to unwind and start to metabolize, or burn up, you could say, in the alchemical metaphor, right? Calcinate. So this relationship, this was something that, it took us a few years to kind of really figure out what this thing was and what we were doing. But we were incredibly charged to just go on this path. And so we documented everything, and we knew what we were doing was important. So we documented everything. We recorded everything, and we both put out a book in 2015 called Shadow Tech, and many of you know about that book, where we put our first ideas in there. Then 9 years later, I put out Transforming Darkness, where I tried to simplify things, and that's been the path. And having Melissa in my life, it was absolutely transformational for me. Absolutely. And I learned what it is to be with a mystic woman. I learned what the mystic woman, the shamaness archetype, is all about. And I learned about my own anima, and I was able to integrate my own anima through that relationship. I made so much progress because of that relationship. And that's why I find it so important for other people, to encourage other people to really do the work inside of a relationship. It's the greatest thing you could possibly do. Yes, you have to work alone, but you also need to work in relationship. Now, if you don't have an intimate relationship where you can do that, you have to do it with somebody else. You have to do it with a friend, a mentor, a therapist, someone. But the intimate alchemical relationship is the ultimate. So then, very tragically, as many of you know, Melissa passed. She had cervical cancer, and for the second time. And she took off in January of 2025. And so that was a terrible, terrible shock to me. But it was another initiation. And I grieved very deeply all of last year. And I, at the same time, made a movie about Melissa Mari, musical alchemist of stage and psyche, melissamarimovie.com. It's now being played in some film festivals, and it will eventually be online for free in the near future. So that is some background, and that is how I got here. And now I'm continuing on Melissa's mission, right? This was our mission, but I'd say there's something, I think Melissa almost knew about the mission even before I did. She was clued into the mission many years before me, of finding and awakening the other alchemists and supporting the other alchemists. So that was the mission then, and it still is today. And so now I'm just finding new ways to carry on the mission. Melissa is basically the mother, we could say, of everything that is that I'm working with here today. Now, before we get into the personal shadow, let's zoom out a little bit. Let's go to the collective shadow. Let's zoom out. We talked about the red pilling. I talked about how I was red pilled. That was back in 2005, I think. And I feel like this is a necessary initiation, because it gets you out and it gets you the greater perspective. You get to see the collective shadow, the institutional shadow, the cultural shadow. And so it is a useful initiation. It is a step in the right direction, definitely. And I think you kind of have to, in some way, be red-pilled. You don't have to spend your whole life down there. You don't have to concentrate on it, but you have to know that that exists, right? And then what you do with it, usually at first, is most people get angry and they want to take action in some way. And they become what I call red pill culture warriors, right? And so they're doing something, they're getting active, they're trying to stop evil in the outer world. And that's useful and that's a good stage and that's fine. And we need people to do that. Not taking anything away from that. It's a necessary place. But there are some people that they should not be staying on that because they have a deeper path. They have a deeper alchemical path in life. And so those folks have to go to the next stage. And that is where you turn the thing around and you take everything that you've been finding out there in the world that's shadowy and you find it inside yourself. As above, so below. Right? So that's the next step, and that's the next red pill initiation, and I call that the what do I call that? I call that the psychospiritual alchemist. It's the path of the psychospiritual alchemist. It's the inner path. It's the shadow worker path. The shamanic path. Right? And I recognize that not everybody, that's only a fraction of people are going to do that. Most people are probably not even going to be red-pilled. But then out of those that are, some of them are going to then turn it around and go on the inner initiation, the inner alchemical path. So that is where we're going. And that's what this path is about. Now, let us get into let's describe some topology here. Let's map out the shadow a little bit. And so because I've been alluding to it, you've recognized this is darkness, this is evil, this is darkness and all of that, but let's get into actually what is it in Jungian psychology, which is the tradition that really has where this comes from. I mean, everybody talks about evil. Everybody, and all theologies talk about it and stuff, but Jungian psychology is the only one that really, boom, nails it and nails it in a holistic way and brings it back to yourself and then gives you ideas for what to do with it and gives you an understanding of why we even have a shadow. That's all explained in Jungian psychology. It took me years to actually gather it all together and kind of get a holistic picture. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm out here talking, is because, wow, okay, I've been working on this for 20-something years, and I actually have like a holistic picture now. I've kind of like demystified this whole thing, and so now I got to tell you about it. So let's explore the shadow, specifically now. To do that, though, we have to map out the psyche itself. The psyche, the mind, we have to, look at that because the shadow is an aspect of the psyche. So what is the psyche? Well, I like Dan Siegel's definition. The mind, or the psyche, is an embodied and relational field of energy and information. The psyche is an embodied and relational field of energy and information. So how are you going to see that? What kind of microscope picks that up? Well, we don't have anything like that. So all we really have, we have to use the psyche to see the psyche. So all we can really do is use metaphors, right? Use analogies and metaphors, symbols and images. And one of the simplest images that is used in psychology is that of an iceberg, because we want to talk about the different aspects of the different parts of the psyche. And so you could basically just look at it as conscious and unconscious. That's like the most simplest way to look at the construction of the psyche. And the conscious mind is like the tip of the iceberg that's in the sunlight. And the unconscious is everything that's underwater. So 10% say of the psyche is conscious, and the other 90% is unconscious. And so the conscious mind is called the ego in Western psychology. In Eastern spiritual texts, the ego is thought of something as negative that you want to transcend or get around because you want to enter some non-dual state and you want to, kind of, it's not that practical really, but you want to transcend the ego. Whereas in Western psychology, you want to clean it up, you want to work with it, you want to heal it, you want to integrate aspects of it that haven't been integrated, the shadow and complexes and stuff, you want to bring that in. So you're working with the ego. The ego is your vessel, your vehicle. But that simple explanation of the psyche as an iceberg, just two pieces, is very simple. We can use that. Now, I like to actually look at the psyche as like a eukaryotic cell, where the ego is the membrane and the unconscious is the cytoplasm. And in Jungian psychology, you have that concept of the capital S self, the soul code. That's in the nucleus. I like that kind of a model. Or the psyche as nodal networks of different levels. So you can use different kind of metaphors. But so in the ego, in the conscious mind, all we're really going to do today is we're going to say, well, you have the conscious ego, and that's everything that you know. That's your memories, that's your perceptions, that's your feelings. That's everything that's going on in your head and in your mind, in your body, everything you're actually aware of. So that's a conscious ego. But then there's a sub-complex in the conscious ego called the persona. And Freud called that the superego. And the persona is the persona complex deals with everything that has to do with your social identity, your image that you show the world, right? It's all of your social traits, and persona means mask. It's the mask that you show the world. So the persona forms based on what your family accepts or rejects, right? So your family says these things are acceptable to us, these things are not acceptable to us. So the good stuff goes into your persona. And then as you get socialized, you go to school and you learn more and more about what the society expects of you and other kids. They like certain things about you, they don't like certain things about you. You detect that, you push everything that is not acceptable into the shadow. And then you find out about the law and what's expected of you at the national level and all of that. And you get into different groups, and then they have their own identities and their own expectations. So you continue to build this persona complex, this persona structure. And that's the mask that you show the world. And then everything else that doesn't fit in the persona, but is still part of you, that's the shadow. That's the most basic understanding of the shadow from Jungian psychology. It started there. We've expanded it now. I definitely have, and other Jungians have alluded to the things that the areas where we can expand it. But I think I feel like I've come to a point to where I can actually start to kind of put that together for myself. But so the shadow is the equal opposite of the persona, Jung said. And so that's the first way that we get a shadow, is that kind of stuff. And so what's in the shadow? Before we go on to some other areas of the shadow, what's in there? So it is, like I said, it's all the things that are particular to you and your family and your groups and all of that and your culture, which differs from person to person, family to family, culture to culture. But in general, it's sexual energy, It's aggression and rage, warrior energy. It's control drives, wanting to control others and our environment. But that's totally antisocial to just do that excessively. It is grandiosity. It is ego inflation, right? It is fear. It is shame, guilt, grief, envy, jealousy, all these kinds of things. Feelings of insecurities and weaknesses, and everything that's behind low self-esteem, or everything that's behind the compensations, the narcissistic compensations. Narcissism is a compensation, and what's behind that compensation. All that's in the shadow, right? So that's like the general shadow material. It goes all the way down to the mammalian, down to the reptilian level. We got reptiles in us. We got monkeys and reptiles in us and everything else. And so if all that energy and all of that kind of relational style of animals were to be expressed in a modern, organized, moral society, it would wreck society. It would wreck people's view of you, of course, but then it would wreck society. And you can see what happens to people who act out their shadow. They go to jail. And that's how we organize society. So that's the shadow. It's everything dark and antisocial about us that we all have, but that we can't express in society. And in some ways, there's nothing wrong with that, because what other kind of arrangement are we going to have, right? To separate us from the animal kingdom, and to have organized societies, we have to do something with our animalistic drives. So we repress them. Now, what we do, I'll go into some other shadow material, but first thing is just to explain that the way the psyche is to develop to deal with this kind of material, to deal with this repression, is a phenomenon called projection. And projection is how we offload our shadows, how we short circuit the ability of this shadow material to make it into the ego, which would shock us, confuse us, take us over, disorient us, and if we were to then express it, it would get us kicked out of polite society. So something has to happen with that material. And so what we do is we project it onto other people. We see what we have in ourselves, what's in our own shadows, our own excessive narcissism or sexuality or shame or weaknesses of every kind and all that. Instead of seeing it in ourselves, because that's so hard, it's being held down, we just see it in someone else. We just point the projector at them. And they may have some of this narcissism or some of this greed or some of this selfishness. They may have some of that. But what's really triggering us about them is the fact that what we see in them that's so ugly is part of us. It's in our shadows. And that's how you know you have shadow materials, because you're being triggered. So following your triggers down is one of the big ways that we do shadow work, which I'll get into. So that's what we do with it. And then when a bunch of us get together, when a whole society or a whole group of people in society gets together and agrees on who the bad one is, who the bad group is, then we can project collectively onto those people. And then we generate huge amounts of energy. And then we can go to war with people. We can have revolutions and all kinds of mass movements of destruction. Right? And so that's how we actually project and eventually displace our shadows, the energy and patterning of our shadows out of the mind and body and into the collective. That's how we offload it. And so we save ourselves, we save our societies, we save our egos, but at the same time we destroy the world. So that's kind of the way it's working. Now there's two other categories of shadow material. The first one that Jungians know about is the golden shadow. And so that's equally like the normal shadow, that it is repressed because it's shocking to you or society. But in this case, the golden shadow is everything that's genius and novel and new and original about you, that is trying to get up there. It's trying to get into your life. It's trying to get into your personality and into your behavior, into your way of life, but it can't because it's tied up in shame or guilt or fear. It's too different from what other people would want or accept. That's the fear. And then, so we hold it down. And so that needs to be contacted too. We don't just pull up the yucky dark stuff and try to find a place for it. We pull up the gold and we try to find a place for that. So that's another category of shadow material. And then there is the category of complexes. And complexes were always dealt with in Jungian psychology, although I think we have a better understanding of them now than we did in Jung's time. And they were like tangential. They were close to the theory of the shadow, but they weren't tied in there. There wasn't expressly said, this is the shadow also. So complexes are basically the organs of the psyche that channel archetypal energy from the collective unconscious. All the archetypes, Jungians talk about archetypes, I'm not going to go into it now, but the archetypal energy, the high voltage energy of the psyche, high voltage libido, like if you use Robert Moore's system, you got the king, the queen, the warrior, the lover, the magician, these kinds of things. That material has to make it into your personality and into your moods and your behavior and your thoughts and your creativity and everything. And the systems that transform that energy, step it down, you could say, and transform it into the ego are called complexes. You could see them as transformers, or you could see it as wiring or plumbing or nodal networks, however you want to see them. And when we get traumatized in early life, right, whether it's specific trauma or developmental trauma, all kinds of different ways that we're traumatized, because humans are very easily traumatized, actually. And that disrupts the development of our complexes. And so our complexes don't go online in a clean way, and they get dysregulated. They become pathological in some way. And so then those complexes cannot bring archetypal energy into consciousness. And so there you get something like depression or all kinds of neuroses or symptoms, or they flood the ego, and then you get grandiosity, narcissism, inflation, however you want to put it, or they try to channel that energy into some kind of what Robert Moore called sideshows. All kind, fighting with your wife or husband, or getting into fights at bars or whatever, or tinkering with this or that never really amounts to anything. Sideshows, or turns into all kinds of physical symptoms, all kinds of syndromes and symptoms and disease. And probably half of all the disease that is around is the shadow getting dumped into the body through complexes. So all that dysregulated energy, that's also in the category of the shadow, right? So these are the categories of the shadow. This is the shadow. Obviously, anyone listening to this that has any interest in this kind of thing would listen to this and go, wow, this has to be dealt with. This has to be worked with. This is huge. This is causing wars. It's causing disease. It's causing all our relationship conflicts. This is the invisible elephant in the living room. We have to figure this out. We have to work with this. We have to figure out better ways of regulating and expressing shadow material. This has to be worked with. Anyone that hears this with a brain and some wisdom would say, wow. But we've known about this for almost 100 years now, 80-something years or whatever. It's been pretty clear to the Jungians of how this works and how it's been working. And they've talked about it. I know Jung, and the Jungians had lots of other projects besides the shadow. But somebody like Erich Neumann put that book out, Depth Psychology and a New Ethic, in 1949, and he just nailed it down. And he said, we must take responsibility for our shadows now after World War II, or we're going to blow ourselves up. This is imperative. We have to do this now. And no one listened. And so we're just still walking around as these unconscious children in adult bodies, with technology that's way too advanced for our psychological maturity. So anyway, that's the shadow. That's what the shadow is. That's how we can describe it and categorize it. Now, before I get into the shadow work kind of list, I'm going to give you one more model here, just because it's so darn helpful. So I could take you into typical kind of, internal shadow work that lots of people know about now. But once you see it through Ken Wilber's integral system, you realize that, wow, there's 4 master categories of the shadow and shadow work that need to be worked with. They all feed back into each other. Like earlier, I was talking about as above, so below. I was talking about how what you see when you're red-pilled, the collective shadow, how that is connected to the personal shadow. It's all one thing. Well, this gets even, when you have it in the 4 quadrants model, it gets even clearer. So without going into too much detail, Ken Wilber recognized that there's 4 ways that you can view any subject. And first person, second person, third person, or third person plural. I, we, it, its. And so the first person perspective is your internal state, your own internal perception of what's going on inside of me, my perception, my feelings, my reality. And then you have the second person we perspective. It's the lower left-hand quadrant. And that's our feelings, our attitudes, our values, our culture, what we agree on as a society, as a family, and our relational field, the field of relationships, and everything that has to do with we and how we share ideas and energies, ideologies and culture and art and all of that. That's all the we quadrant. And then you have the it quadrant of the body itself, the physical body. Your actual physical body, your brain and neural connections and your physiology and your nervous system. And then also Ken Wilber puts behavior in there too, because it's also visible from the outside. What's visible from the outside? The individual visible from the outside is this quadrant, upper right-hand quadrant. And so that's the body and everything. Well, the shadow's in there too. The shadow is all kinds of psychosomatic syndromes and diseases and pains and chronic this and chronic that and all of that. That's all how the shadow dumps into the body, right? So we got that there. And then you got the lower right-hand quadrant, which is the institutions. That's the system. That's all the institutions that we build together, the education system and the economic system and the the military-industrial complex. It's even called complex. Big pharma complex, and all the institutions and government and all of that. That's the shared collective systems. That's the lower right-hand quadrant. Those are your 4 quadrants of perspective. And the shadow is operating through all 4 of those. And it's all one entity. It's all one entity. So with that, now we can get into shadow work practices that actually address all those quadrants. We don't just have to just do it in the personal mind, or maybe in relationship. It wasn't even until, I hate to say, I didn't invent this. Ken Wilber, would have told you this if you had asked him at any time, hey, does the shadow manifest across all 4 quadrants? You'd say, yeah, of course. Well, what is it, Ken? Oh, it would have been this. But it wasn't until 2017 that he really started working with it and kind of putting it into his system outside of a single paper, I think. But in that system, he didn't really do it in the 4 quadrants. He did it through the stages, the integral stages. I'm the only person I know of that's actually put the shadow into the 4 quadrants and really mapped it out. I haven't mapped it through the stages because it's just another level of complexity that I think just turns people off. But this is so helpful. So now we can go into shadow work from the 4 quadrants. And I do want to. Okay, well, I think I'm gonna continue my. I'm gonna continue on, and then I'll get to your comments, everyone. So I got to put my glasses on to see this now. Because of the amount of time that we've been going for almost an hour, and I want to talk to folks or answer comments. And because this is just a practice run of a workshop, this isn't the actual workshop. I'm just going to kind of take you through shadow work in all quadrants, and I'll make a comment on all of these lines here, and so you kind of get exposure to it, even though we're not going to go into it very deeply. So let's start in the upper left-hand quadrant, the I quadrant, and let's talk about it from the personal quadrant. And this is where shadow work is usually discussed. So basic mindfulness or witness consciousness, right? And so this is just part of any self-development model or practice, is just becoming self-aware. Watching yourself think, watching yourself act, watching yourself get triggered, just being, activating the watcher, the witness. And the more altitude you can get, the better. The more separation you can get between your conscious awareness and your reactivity. As you develop more and more, you get more separation, and that's what you want. And in the case of shadow work, you're actually using that witness consciousness to actually investigate and make an inventory of everything that's shadowy or negative, we could say, that's showing up in your mind and showing up in your body and in your feelings and your attitudes, right? Because there's shadow material that's completely repressed and you don't even know you have it yet. But then there's shadow material that's suppressed, just suppressed. And so it's kind of halfway. And so if you start looking for it, you'll see it. And self-aware people figure out, oh, okay, I'm been kind of rude. My tone of voice is kind of this way or that way. My behavior this, my behavior that. And you become aware of your insecurities, your weaknesses, your reactivity, and all your immaturity in various ways, and you start to track it. And there's not an infinite amount of that material. It's finite and it's knowable. And then you just start writing it down. You just start keeping lists and you start journaling about the stuff that's negative or shadowy that you find in yourself. And so that's just the first kind of basic practice. First, you just become self-aware, and then you start journaling. And so general journaling, or what they call expressive writing, dream journaling, shadow awareness journaling, all this kind of stuff. And then communicating it to other people at some point. You have to eventually communicate this to other people, to your alchemical partner, to your mentor, your therapist, your best friend, somebody. You have to start communicating this to other people. It has to start to make it out of your own life and into the relational field. Typing about it on social media and putting it out there, however, but it's got to be shared with other people at some point. Maybe not at first, but at some point. And then you can do all kinds of things. Active imagination, which is a Jungian practice, using art as a channel for your shadow material, making all kinds of different kinds of art, cultural material out of your shadow material. Projection and trigger analysis. Note that's like add to your shadow awareness list all the things that where you're projecting onto other people and what's triggering you in other people. Becoming aware of that and working with that, and tracing down those triggers down to where they go down to, because they all go down to something in earlier life, something in your shadow, something in your parents' early life, it goes down to something, and you start digging that stuff out. With projection, when you are projecting onto other people and demonizing them, and you notice it, you can do practices like use imagination to imagine yourself being compassionate to that person, understanding that person, or imagining them as a child and being compassionate to them, or imagining that person as yourself and being compassionate to that part of yourself. So you can use compassion. Melissa and I had a term. The heart is toxic to the virus. The virus is the shadow. And so bringing in compassion is to work with your projections is a shadow work practice. Then there's the emotional processing method, which I've described many times. It's in all my books, where you sit with your emotions that come up when you're triggered. You sit with them and you process them in place, and you allow them to move through you, and you develop new physiological pathways for that emotional material. That's essential. I mean, I've given whole talks on that, just on that subject alone. It's absolutely imperative that we do that, and especially when you're in relationship, when you have conflicts in relationship, that you be able to physically process the triggered emotional material. You can't just turn away from it and run away and say, oh, okay, that was yesterday. No, you have to process it in your body. So studying complex models, studying like internal family systems, studying Jungian complexes. Look at Eckhart Tolle's understanding of the pain body and different models of complexes and the inner parts of the unconscious that are dysregulated. There's a number of models of that, and so using those models, using that language and those maps to be able to analyze your internal dysregulation and why you get into conflicts, and noticing these parts and naming these parts. In IFS, you name your parts. You name your parts, you talk to your parts, and meditation I have on the list here, which is just kind of pretty basic, but that's in this quadrant. And then find and nurture your spirituality. That's in this quadrant. So that's the upper left-hand quadrant list. The actual list that I have of shadow work practices in each of these quadrants is twice as long as this. But I'm just bringing in what's I think is useful to work with at first. The lower left-hand quadrant, the relational or we quadrant now, is you can't do it all alone. Find a shadow work mentor or others to communicate with, and not just people on social media, people in your actual life who you can have intimacy with, communication intimacy with and transparency with, people you can trust. people you can talk to about your stuff. You need that. And it's very, very important. And I know there's not a lot of people like that. That's what, I'm one of those people, and there's others, though. You can find them. When you get serious, you find these people. They show up. I have on here the alchemical relationship, which I talked about a little bit with what I had with Melissa. This is where you and your partner are both studying these things. You're both working on yourselves. You're both sharing these maps and models and understandings, and you're both psychoanalyzing each other and helping each other access old material and work through old wounds, right? You're doing inner child work with each other. You're doing IFS parts work with each other. And when you get triggered and you have conflicts, you're analyzing your conflicts with your partner. And you have to realize when you have conflicts with people that it's not just you two, it's not just Jack and Jill having a conflict. It's Jack and Jill and a whole family of unconscious parts that are reactive because you touched some kind of a wound. Something fragile got touched, and that's what caused the conflict. It's not the surface level excuse of what, oh, you said this, or your tone of voice, or you did that, or whatever. That's always just the surface level cover. What it really is what they call an exiled part, a wounded part in IFS. A dysregulated complex got activated. It got triggered because something touched that, and now that activated all this reactivity. And then the other person is part of the situation too. It takes two to tango, they say. So both people have a complex or multiple parts that are interacting in these conflicts. So each person in the relationship has to analyze their side of it and totally take responsibility for their side of it. Even when one person is the obvious aggressor, underneath the surface, the victim was playing into it. And the deeper you get into this, the more you can recognize how that was happening and start to work with that. So another thing I have on my list is that when you do develop an understanding of your internal parts and you start naming your parts, when those parts get active in a conflict, you can say to the other person, oh, such and such part got active. Mad girl got active. Monkey boy got active. Right? You don't have to say the other person's name because that's just more, triggering and wounding. So you can actually talk to another person about their parts. Talk to their parts, not to the person. Always analyze and repair after conflict. Always analyze and repair after conflict. Never just sweep it under the rug. Oh yeah, we had another fight, and it's just sweep it under the rug, whatever. Hopefully it'll pass. No. We analyze it, we apply our models, we apply our understandings, we heal and we repair the relationship together. And we recognize that it's both of us, not just one of us. And so we use the opportunity to get more intimate. And this builds true intimacy in a relationship. This builds true intimacy in a relationship, is when you can trust each other to work with each other's wounded parts. That's how you get serious intimacy and trust in a relationship. Depth. Shedding cultural and familial scripts. Figuring out, unwinding what beliefs, what ideologies, what beliefs, what cultural beliefs are really yours and which ones are not. Which ones are just part of your political party or part of your friends or your church or your group. They have collective beliefs, but a person who's individuating, becoming an individual, has to figure out what their truths are, what their beliefs are. And it can't just be go grab something else that seems a little more appropriate off the shelf and just pick it up, which is what most people do. They get sick of their script from church or from family, and then they just go grab some other mythic script from some conspiracy group. And they don't analyze that either. That's not helpful. You got to break it down and figure out what is this really about, and is this true for me, and what's true about it and what's not, right? So that's we're unwinding our cultural scripts there and sort of remaking our persona based on that. I talked about sharing your material, but yeah, I talked about making art as shadow work, but when you share it with the public, that's where it goes into the we field. And so making public art, writing, comedy, any kind of art or cultural material that you share with others that has to do with the shadow or your shadow, that's in this category. Write your ethical manifesto. That was in my last book, Transforming Darkness. I put my ethical manifesto in there as an example so you can see what it looks like when somebody actually figures out, these are my ethics, these are my values, this is my politics, these are my morals. Figure it out for yourself, write it down on paper. That's your ethical manifesto. And you can change it as you need to. Mine actually hasn't changed since I wrote it 9 years ago. And then share your process and normalize shadow work and mentor younger people when you get ready to do that. All right, that's the lower left-hand quadrant. Where are we with time now? 8:39. We're probably gonna have to go a little bit late here today because it'll probably take me another 20 minutes or something to get through this, and then I want to answer your comments. I know I'm kind of dominating the whole broadcast with this, but that was my aim for this week. It's good information though, right? I mean, we need this. So the upper right hand quadrant, this is the body. This is the physical body. And this is your body and your behavior. This is you from the outside, your body and behavior. And so eat super clean is number one on the list. Eat super clean. Super, super clean. Get as clean as you possibly can with what you're putting into your body. That's number one. Exercise, weight training, cardio, sports, warrior training. Yeah, people get older and our bodies, we need to take care of our bodies. We have to do that. And so not only does it keep you healthy, but it keeps up your self-respect and your self-esteem, right? I mean, the way Americans walk around like 100 freaking pounds overweight or more is just appalling. I cannot believe that people will walk around, 20, 25 pounds overweight when you're getting older or whatever. That's one thing. 100, 150, 200 pounds overweight? I mean, are you kidding me? That's just straight up mental illness. And the way that that's been normalized is just so incredibly shadowy and pathological. That's just sick. So taking care of your body is an absolute must. Yoga, dance, play, movement, nature, lover activities. Some of these are kind of self-explanatory. Oh yeah, the warrior training. That's very good for anybody that's got repressed aggression. Use it in a place where it's actually gonna get displaced in a healthy way there. That's very, jujitsu, karate, martial arts, self-defense training, whatever it is. John Sarno's understanding of TMS, how psychosomatic syndromes are caused by repressed shadow material, how a lot of your physical chronic pain and other syndromes are shadow material. So go back to the inner shadow work that we talked about, the upper left-hand quadrant. Your symptom is a symbol. Your symptom is a symbol. When you understand, I'm not going to go into it right now, but when you understand what a symbol is, it's a multi-dimensional packet of information at multiple levels of consciousness. personal and collective. A symbol is not a sign. A symbol is what I just described. And your symptoms are symbols. So in the same way that you would analyze dreams, the symbols in dreams, to try to understand what's going on in the psyche, you analyze your symptoms, your physical symptoms in the same way. Nervous system regulation, any method of nervous system regulation, breath work, open focus meditation, which is a type of very effective meditation for calming your body, somatic experiencing, trauma release exercises, EMDR therapy, all of this is about is somatic. EMDR is somatic and psychic, but I mean, we could go, each of these lines here we can talk about in depth, but we're just going over them right now. Psychedelics or cannabis, with caveats, use elder guides. Yeah. So, very useful, both of those very useful in extreme moderation, and with the proper support. Quitting addictions, ritualize it, do the inner work, keep phone and social media in the background of life. Okay? Just going to go over it, just going to leave that there. Sex, healthy sex and relationships. Sex and relationships have to be conscious. No hookups. Do the inner and relational shadow work. Once you get to a certain level, you can't have unconscious relationships anymore. You can't. The person that you're going to get with has to be able to do this work with you. That's once you get to a level to where it's in this deep enough, you can't go out with anybody that's unconscious anymore. That doesn't work anymore. So, and then make your sacred space, your altar, your sacred space inside your house or in your environment. Okay, now we're on the lower right-hand quadrant, the institutional systemic shadow. Parasitic careers, get out or clean them up from the inside. Right? Look at your career, look at your job, who you're working for. Are you working for a parasitic company? Are you working for a company that's got a lot of shadow, right? You can get out of it, or you can do what you can to try to clean it up from the inside. That may work for a while, but it may not work for long term. Depends. You may be able, some places you can clean them up, but you have to be to a certain level of awareness before you can even do that. Simplify your lifestyle to make leaving bad jobs possible. Just going to leave that there. Debt and contracts, debtor to creditor mindset, right? Got to get out of all debt. The whole debt thing, total trap, total fraud, and all the ways that you contract with the commercial world. There's so many contracts, there's so many commercial, legal, and relational contracts that are going on that people are unaware of, and you have to pull those apart, analyze them, and go, is this a symbiotic relationship? Is this a mutualistic or symbiotic relationship, or is this a parasitic relationship? Am I either being a parasite or is somebody else being a parasite on me? And then either remake those contracts or get away from them, wherever they are. Parasitic economics. Use local credit unions. Boycott manipulative and parasitic corporations. Promote local currencies. That's a whole ball of wax I'm not going to get into now. Parasitic medicine. The government corporate medical complex. Proceed with extreme care. That's obvious. Transparent and non-parasitic personal business. How is your business being non-transparent and parasitic? You got to go through your business model, right? Where are you being shady? Where are you being shadowy in your personal business? Local politics still okay. Federal is trash. Can you help locally with your shadow aware mindset or not? Is there a way you can get involved in local politics and help? If you can, do it. If you can't, you can't. You're gonna have to just work outside of the system. And then vote your conscience, not the lesser of two evils. That's right. That pretty much just puts federal politics out, or a lot of it. Unplug from the matrix, get off grid, grow food, homeschool, ride bicycles, prepping, live by the old ways. And you can do that over time as you move into this shadow aware lifestyle. So that's my whole thing. And then I have a conclusion here, right? So what is my conclusion? The great work is the greatest work. What can be more meaningful and important than healing and evolving yourself while promoting a new ethic of shadow aware life? Right? So that's what I just did there, is I just presented the kind of quick version of a workshop where we can go into each of those things in more depth. And that took, about an hour and 45 minutes, right? No, an hour and 15 minutes. Let's see here, 7:30, 8:30, yeah, great. That was only an hour and 15 minutes or something like that, hour and 20 minutes. And so, that means that if I were to give a 2-hour workshop, we'd have another 45 minutes to talk. Or a 3-hour workshop is where it really would have to be, because we need to get into your personal situations and your personal questions. And all of that is like an overview. It's an orientation to orient you in this direction. But, there's so much in there. And there's so many questions that come up around all that. So there has to be time to really work through it at the personal level with everybody. But that's what I wanted to do today, and so that's done. So there we go, and you guys can go back and listen to that later if you want to. Now we do have someone that has been commenting a lot. Let's see. My shadow is 10 years in prison, stunted and guarded for 14. Well, your shadow is lifelong, but trying to interpret what you're saying here. All of this is in the category of what we talk about here, though, yes. I'd like a guide to map out my subconscious or the quadrants, or some of your lessons on unraveling my mind and mapping it. I'm single-ish by choice, though I'm in a media personality building up. Right now, right arrow, that takes commitment. Okay, I do understand that one there. That one, I understand everything you're saying there. Okay, yes. So you can go to my website, shadowtechalchemy.com, look on the books page. I'm going to give you specific instructions now to answer your questions. Look on the books page at shadowtechalchemy.com and download my last book. It's free. It's called Transforming Darkness. You can also get it on Amazon if you want the paper copy. I have another book called Shadow Tech that's more esoteric. But this one is kind of gives you a basic lesson on what the shadow is. It talks about autonomous complexes, and it gives you pretty much what I gave you in this broadcast is shadow work practices in all 4 quadrants. And then there's a reading list in the back of the book of books that you can start reading. You can start, if you want to, with Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert Johnson. You can also get, these are the 2 books I would probably recommend to start with. Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert Johnson, and then Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark by Robert Masters. Right? Later you can get into Robert Moore. And But Robert Johnson, Owning Your Own Shadow, and Robert Masters, Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark. Those two books. The Robert Masters one is not a Jungian book necessarily. The Robert Johnson one is, and you can read many Robert Johnson books. They're very small, and they will introduce you to Jungian psychology. And that's kind of the direction that I point people in. I point them in the direction of Jungian psychology, and then I ask people to, investigate it on their own and do their own research and read on their own, and then I'm here to answer questions for you. So as you delve into that, I can help clarify things for you, because it's a lot. There's a lot in there. It's a big project. And then also I should say that this is a lifestyle. Cleaning yourself up, healing yourself. This is a lifestyle. And but you can make a lot of progress quickly when you really dedicate to this. You can make progress quickly. You can make necessary progress relatively quickly. But long term, it stretches out over your whole life. You're always going to be coming to more shadow material to work with. But yeah. So read my book. Read those two other books that are about that. And I think you'll be good to go there. You'll have some starting material there, and see what you can, if you can maybe like get a book, like there's a book called if you want a basic education on Jungian psychology. First of all, I have reading lists all over the place. There's one in the back of that Transforming Darkness, but I don't know if this book I'm about to tell you about is in there. It's called Practical Jung by Harry Wilmer. It's got a blue cover. It's not expensive. It's on Amazon still. Practical Jung by Harry Wilmer. And it's probably for therapists to learn Jungian psychology, people who are trained in another school, to basically have everything you need to know about Jungian psychology and all the basic concepts. And he draws, it's like pictures and stuff, and it's the way he writes and stuff is very is very easy to read. And so I would say get the Practical Jung book as a way to just have a textbook basically on Jungian psychology that you can always kind of go back to and keep up with. And then you can start listening to Robert Moore lectures. Robert L. Moore. Just put in Robert Moore. There's into YouTube. There is a channel called Neo-Jungian Structural something or other. Neo-Jungian something. Neo-Jungian Structural something. It's some guy's channel. I don't know why he's calling it that. I mean, that's what Robert Moore called his stuff. Put in Robert Moore Neo-Jungian, and you'll see that channel. Start listening to Robert Moore lectures. Robert Moore is he's like my kind of hero in this area. And so there you go. I think that'll kind of get you started. And then you can keep coming back here and asking me questions, and I'll do what I can. Does anybody else have anything they want to put in there? Because we're getting close to 9. I thought we might go over, but we're getting close to 9, and so I want to hear from others that might want to say something. I usually keep a list of the key things that I'm going to talk about each week, but this one was going to be the workshop overview. And but I had one other thing on my list, that's something that came up in the week that I wanted to point out. And this kind of goes more broad into the whole thing of social media. Different social media platforms kind of have different cultures. And I've noticed that Twitter, now called X, is basically like the Colosseum. It's like the Roman Colosseum of social media. And it's the bread and circuses. And it is just atrocious. It is very shadowy. And a lot of people go on there to fight. They go on there to dump their shadow material. They go there to criticize, to fight, and to look at shadow material, and then to oftentimes blame somebody for it. So a lot of blaming. I mean, obviously, you look at some of the cultural shadow material that's out there. You look at politicians and deep state types that are, doing false flag terrorism and defrauding us and coming up with fake this and fake that and everything. I mean, obviously, you look at that, or all, I can go on and on about all the red pill stuff. You look at that, of course, at first, you're going to get mad about it. You're going to say, who are these freaks? And so, but you can get very addicted to just posting on there all of your grievances about the world, and nobody's working on themselves. Nobody on there is working on themselves. Nobody, really nobody. I mean, there's, let's say, 0.001 people that are on there are working on themselves. You can actually find a couple people on there that it's clear that they are. But nobody's talking about psychospiritual maturity and advancement or Jungian psychology or any form of I mean, there must be some, people that in those kinds of domains, they're using Facebook, they're using YouTube, they might even be using TikTok. I think they are. People who are into spirituality and inner development are just not spending time on X. And I've slowly figured this out. And I mean, I've known it kind of for a while now, but it's become incredibly obvious that it's not going to change over there. And now it's just filled with bots and stuff. So you kind of have to select what social media platform is conducive to your mindset. But the whole thing needs to be tuned out to a great degree. And I've noticed that a lot of people are comfortable with social media relationships. And that's just not healthy. It's just not healthy. It's not the evolutionary direction at all. Right? So I'm not saying turn it off, use it for whatever it is, but keep it in the background of life. And then start cultivating real relationships and finding people. I mean, I can't believe where we're at with this thing. We're such wimps when it comes to having intimate relationships with each other. Intimate friendships. We're just such wimps, the Americans. The Europeans are a lot better, and a lot of people around the world in other places. The Americans are the worst. So, but anyway, my point, what I was going to say is that there's a lot of narcissism, obviously, on social media. Facebook is just, Twitter is less of the what do they call those? Selfies. Less selfies on Twitter. But on Facebook and Instagram, I don't even use Instagram. It's like a child's toy. But man, it's just mass narcissism, and it's just not satisfying to anybody. And so, but then there's this strain I've noticed, this is what I was going to get to, this strain of young men, smart young men. They're smart. They're in their 20s or 30s. They're old enough to be able to, feel a little bit cocky, whether they've graduated college or not or whatever. They're smart. Maybe they're even a little bit on the spectrum or something, but they are getting on social media to attack people. They look at people's ideas and stuff, and they attack them, and then they try to drag people down into these into fights, and they get off on fighting with people and nitpicking people's stuff and insulting. And I see them. I mean, I get this a little bit myself, but not that much. but I see them doing it to other people day in and day out. I see these smart, aggressive young men who have no real life experience, they're in their 20s and 30s, and no real wisdom yet. And they're out there just slamming people, not even knowing what they're talking about. And they're so smug and so confident and so arrogant, and it's all compensatory. It's total compensation. And they're just trolls, just trolling and just making social media hell for anybody, because these jerk-offs are out there just insulting and nitpicking and criticizing everything. And of course, it's all shadow projection for them. And they don't know anything about shadow projection. They don't know anything about psychology. They don't know anything about nothing, but they think they do. And these young men are just a social media plague. And in real life world that we had before social media world, these guys would have got their asses kicked, right? And they would have been brought into some kinds of social boundaries, right? And so they're just, I don't know what they are, but they're in their room playing video games and being aggressive online. And this is a plague of these, and it's sad. It's sick and sad. And there's nothing I can do about it because they're just anonymous on there or whatever. But Theo, what's going on, brother? Yeah, Theo, I don't know if you were here, but shadow grandiosity. Yeah, man, exactly. A lot of shadow grandiosity with these people. It's just, but then you see it with you see it with my God, look at the U.S. government. Talk about shadow grandiosity, or the Israeli government, shadow grandiosity. All kinds of governments, right? Shadow grandiosity just pouring out at the national level, at the group level, at the ethnic level, at the religious level. You got religious grandiosity. It's just grandiosity everywhere. And no awareness that this is pathology. This is pathology. This is compensation. This is dysregulated complexes. You got to work on this. You got to work on yourself, or you're going to burn yourself and everybody else out around you. Nowhere awareness. And the psychologists are nowhere to be found. There's no op-eds in the New York Times. There's no editorial in the New York Times or whatever. There's no mainstream programs to teach people about this kind of stuff. There's nothing. People are just have no idea of the just whole levels of reality, of self-development and self-healing that you can get into. You don't even have to be at the Jungian level, but there's so many different ways to develop yourself, and there's just no awareness. I mean, I remember Jung was always pointed out how exoteric the Americans were. And I'd say the Europeans and most people besides the Americans around the world have more humility. And there's more humility, and there's more calm and less reactivity in general than the Americans. But still, in the East, it's at least in the East, it's in the culture, it's understood that there are different spiritual practices, different types of yoga, and different types of meditative work, and there's spiritual sects and all of this that deal with healing yourself from the inside out. In the Judeo-Christian world, it's all exoteric. It's all about your behavior. But it's not about what's inside, what's actually stimulating your behavior, your actual programming. So, The East there's more of this kind of awareness in there. The West, though, just doesn't have this. And so this is back to Eric Neumann and his new ethic. He pointed this out, that the Judeo-Christian world just it's just all about exoteric. It's about projection and displacement, and it's not about working on it. It's not about integrating it. So we got a long ways to go. It's going to take well past our lifetimes, but our job is to take this seriously for ourselves and become alchemists ourselves and spread the word and start some kind of movement of this, just like they do in the East. Remember, during the 20th century, a lot of Eastern religions sent emissaries to the West. They sent Yogananda. They sent the Tibetan Karmapas and Dalai Lamas, and they sent them to the West, and they recognized it's time for the Western man to start getting some of this stuff, this inner gnosis, this inner understanding the inner world, and learning about their consciousness and everything. So that all started to happen. And so there are movements in the West of people who are carrying on the Eastern spiritual traditions. We have those. We have different Buddhism and of different kinds, all kinds of different Buddhism from all those different places. And we have the esoteric Hindu practices. We have all that. It's still esoteric, but it's out there. But we don't have, other than the Jungian system is the only Western system of inner development, inner spiritual development that's really worked out. It's really worked out and grounded, and it's tied back to the esoteric tradition of the Western civilization through the alchemists and the Gnostics to the Neoplatonists and to the Egyptians and all the way back. That's the esoteric tradition of the Western world into Mesopotamia and Persia and all of that. That's the whole esoteric, the Sufis and all of that. It's all, that's starting to become East there, but it's generally the West. And so the Jungian system, well, you have the Gurdjieffian system too, but it's not as well worked. It's not as large. The Gurdjieffian system is alchemy too. It's interesting. I actually got to meet, Melissa and I got to meet Jacob Needleman, who's sort of like one of the most famous modern Gurdjieffians. Gurdjieffis, I think they call them. And went to a lecture of his, and I asked him a question. I said, so it sounds like what you're talking about is alchemy. And he said, yes, this is alchemy. That's it. This is our form of alchemy. But the Gurdjieffian system is even more esoteric than the Jungians. Theo says that the East is like the right brain in the West. That's very good. Very good. I'm going to keep that. That's a very good recognition there. It's like the left brain. Yeah, the East is like the right brain, and the West is like the left brain of the Earth. We need to unite, find the gold, and let go of the garbage. Yeah. Integrate the garbage. Work through the garbage. Yeah, that's very good. Yes, that's it. It's really what it is. And, but, the thing about the shadow, like I was saying, and I don't know if I mentioned this, Theo, but I just did like a rough draft of a whole shadow workshop on this program today. So if you go back and listen to this later, you'll get all that. But, the thing about the shadow is you've got the traumatized complexes and the dysregulation and the grandiosity and the depression and the anxiety and all the somatic symptoms. That can all be worked with and worked out, and that is not necessary. You can raise children. It's possible to raise children that don't develop a bunch of complexes. And you don't have to have a whole lot of gold and shadow. If the parents are awake enough and they can recognize the gold and they can inspire it and mirror it, then you don't have a whole lot of gold and shadow. You still will have some, because there's a lot they can't even see, and there's a lot that their social milieu won't understand. So you still have gold and shadow. But the main issue that we have here is the structural shadow of the very fact that we are built on the animal body, right? We're built on the animal body. So we have the primal, the mammalian, and the reptilian, the most primal kind of energies, patterns, and behaviors are built into our system. They're in our DNA. They're in our bodies, and they're in our DNA. And this kind of energy and these patterns are completely antisocial. And we haven't figured out as a species yet what to do with the fact that we're built on an animal body, and that the animal is trying to still be an animal. And there is no amount of meditation or shadow integration that actually overcomes that. That's still part of the human physiology, the psyche, and our condition in general. So can we plug in some kind of brain chip and then go into a holodeck or whatever, like on Star Trek, and act out our shadow material in mock? Can we do that? Yes, that would be something cool. That might be something that we could do. Maybe we can invent things that will help us sort of express our animalism without having to do it to each other in the physical world. But people that play video games, you think that video games would, express people's aggression and all of that, but it really just charges up their whole bodies, and then they go out into the world and they act it out anyway. So I don't even know if that would work, the holodeck idea or whatever. Are people going to try to genetically engineer us to be more docile? Yeah, of course they're trying to do that. But is that going to work? Is that just going to stunt the species? Probably. So we don't have an answer yet for what to do with the structural shadow. So we haven't gotten rid of evil yet, and there's nothing on the horizon that can totally cure us of evil. It's like, and if it wasn't coming from us, it would be coming from some other force. It's like this dimension seems to be a duality dimension. And this seems to be our training. Earth seems to be a duality-based training camp. So, or humanity does. So anyway, we can't think that doing this kind of work is some kind of total panacea. But it is definitely can heal a lot of you, and it definitely can make you a lot more balanced. That's for sure. It definitely can. And it is definitely a very meaningful and heroic thing to do with your life. To do the great work. So so I just kind of want to keep it in balance there. We're not reaching nirvana with all this. It's not a panacea, but it is. We could definitely get to a lot more balanced state. And I imagine that if the human species survives, we don't know what's going to happen with it, but that as the yuga cycles, as they talk about in the East, as those keep turning, then we probably will be in a place of much greater balance and spiritual awareness and and balance in whatever 8,000 years or whatever they say, however that works. Okay, everyone. So, I encourage everybody that didn't catch the workshop overview that I gave, then just go back and hit play when this is done. And if anybody has any comment they want to put in before we leave for the night, go ahead and do that. And if anybody knows anybody else that's into Jungian psychology, that's into shadow work, that's into waking up, that's into alchemical relationships, that's into taking inner work seriously, you can send them here. I appreciate that. It's not even for me, guys. I have to do this. This is me and Melissa's mission, and I'm stuck with it. And I cannot control where people are at. I can't control whether or not this is attractive or not attractive to people. I can't control whether or not this scares people or not. It's just, I can't do anything about it. And I can't not do what I'm supposed to do. So I'm just here doing what I'm supposed to do. And then if anybody else can benefit it from it, well, then they can come on over and I'll do whatever I can to help. So, that's it. That's all I'm doing. So the great work is hard but beautiful. Yeah, extremely meaningful. Thank you, Theo. Thanks for being an advanced human being and staying on the path. And staying on the path, doing the great work. All right, so there we go, everybody. ShadowTechAlchemy.com. Oh, a little bit of update. Let me give you a little update on the movie about Melissa. I've always made it available to anybody that wants to see the movie about Melissa. Eventually, it'll just be on YouTube and everybody can see it, at the end of this year or something. But if anybody wants to see it beforehand, just send me an email, ShadowTechAlchemy.com. Send me an email and I'll send you the link. It's right now premiering in an esoteric film festival. It's called the Hermetic Film Festival in Italy. And so it's premiering there, and they have if you go to hermeticfilmfestival.com, they have a cinema, an online cinema, like 3 theaters in there. And there's about, 25, 30 movies. Some of them are shorts, some of them are long form features, but they're all esoteric and hermetic or esoteric. And so it's a really cool film festival, and it's only 20, 23, it's 20 euros to get in there. So, and then you get to have a pass to watch all the films. And it's going until the 30th. I know that the film festival goes till the 30th, but that might just be the real one, the real brick and mortar one. But the online one, you have to look at the website and see. I imagine you could keep watching. Of course, you could keep watching after the 30th. But you can go over there. You can see the movie about Melissa Mari, musical alchemist of stage and psyche. That's up there. Or just send me a link and I'll send you a private link to it if you don't want to go in there. But so anyway, it's getting out into film festivals and stuff, and that's really good, and Melissa would be very happy with that. So, alrighty, I will see you guys next week, next Tuesday, and thanks for everything, and have a great week, everybody.